Next question, we'll start with Mr. Malloy. Many schools are anticipating more layoffs of teachers next year because of the slumping economy. Some administrators, including Hartford Superintendent Steven Adamowski, say that seniority provisions prevent them from keeping the best teachers or the teachers whose skills are the best fit for certain schools. What's your view?
In the plan that my running mate and I released, we mentioned that, looking at different systems to be used, engaging who stays in a school building, who keeps a job. I've been on record for a long time as favoring an examination of that very system. You know and I know that will require negotiations, and therefore you need to hire somebody who can actually negotiate with these folks. And I intend to be a leader in educational reform in the state. But let me say, because you started there, the idea that we potentially will start a third year in a row with fewer teachers in September than we ended the prior year in June is, in this state, I think, quite ridiculous. And that is well beyond the adjustment for decline in population. Norwich, for instance, closed 2 schools this year, a system that's actually in the DERG that Stanford's in. We need to do better than this. The idea that we have gone to funding flow of state dollars to local boards of education is about 17% less than the national average. Connecticut is less than the national average. And all of that difference grew up over the last 20 years. And now it shows itself. But on top of that, we have a governor who cut the ECS cost-sharing grant program by 14.5%, then used ARA money to paper over it. Now, you know, if I had been governor, I would have wanted to see a portion of that money be additional funding for schools so that we wouldn't have had the layoffs the last 2 years. I have a very different approach and a very different commitment to public education and making it stronger. And when I say public education, I'm also talking about our charter schools.
Mr. Marsh?
Well, there's a reason I'm standing here in the middle. And when you hear one side blame the governor for the past problems and the other side blaming the legislature for the past problems, remember that it was the governor and the legislature that brought us to where we are. Neither of them acted independently, nor do they have the powers to do so. I think the question was regarding tenure and what we're going to do as far as the diminishing number of teachers under the budget pressures. Something that I've been involved with locally, as many of you may or may not know, I'm the first selectman of the town of Chester. I'm also the chairman of a 17-town regional councils of governments, including Middletown. The last two years, I have forcefully advocated asking our educators to take a pay freeze. Our municipal leaders, our municipal employees had agreed to do so. All I'm asking, and this is where it starts, it's not up to us. There's another seat at the table. Union leadership has a seat at the table to prevent some of the draconian cuts we've seen in staffing. They can come and say all we are willing to do is take what most of the constituency of Connecticut is willing to do. I know as a small business owner, I would have loved to have a pay freeze instead of see what I've seen from the income from my business over the last 2 years. We can all do more with a little bit less. We can make those choices, but labor has to sit at that table and not talk about what they've given up or what increases the decrease in the increases that they've seen. And again, I don't want to put it on their backs, but they have a role in this to play. They have a responsibility to keep our schools well-staffed, as do communities, to set the priority for education where we want to be. My concern is that we are seeing a real divide here where we're putting all the blame on one side or the other, either municipalities or the state unwilling to fund their education or the teachers unwilling to come to the table. Just like with the Republicans, the Democrats, executive and legislative branches, we need to come together and work towards a common goal of a better education system.
Mr. Foley?
Well, here's a classic case of showing an important difference between me and Daniel on how we'll perform as governor. He is a career politician, so I'll forgive him for saying we have to examine this. That's not what he said when he met in front of the teachers union several weeks ago. He promised to preserve the status quo with respect to tenure. So that doesn't sound to me like there's going to be much of an examination. Tenure is a corrosive effect on our school system, and we need to change it. The idea of just promoting people and keeping people in the system because of how long they've been there is antithetical to doing what's right for kids. We need to get beyond this conflict between special interests and the interests of our children. When I'm governor, kids will come first. And when it comes to having excellent teachers, I don't care how long a teacher's been in the school system. I worked with Senator Gaffney here and Rob Hegney to get draft some legislation to get Teach for America authorized in this state only as recently as about 5 years ago. It's ridiculous. So we not only need to get rid of tenure and start promoting teachers based on performance, and ones who don't perform well enough, they need to be given an opportunity for professional development, but if they still don't perform well, they need to be retired promptly from the system. We owe that to our kids. And we need to develop alternative routes for certification. These are all in my plan. They're things that I will immediately act on January 5th.